Rocky. How are you doing today?
Good, Sarah. How are you?
I am so pumped to see you because we can see each other on Zoom here and chat with you. I feel like I was thinking back, it's been quite a number of years since you left
Yeah.
Penn State since I've seen you.
Yes. Yes. It's been, oof, I want to say what, 6 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been six or
Sounds
seven
crazy.
years. Doesn't
Yeah.
that sound wild? And
Yeah.
in those moments too, the last moments I was seeing you, you were being drafted into the National Women's Soccer League.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That was crazy times too. Like, I feel like before and after college is really, really stressful.
Oh no, just tell me a little bit about like what was your recruiting process like? Because I don't know that most people know. Well, most of our listeners probably do know. I mean, you're originally from Costa Rica.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. My recruiting process was, I want to say, really unique, especially like 11 years ago, which is around the time that I was being recruited. Um, I feel like I knew I wanted to come to the US to have an athletic scholarship, but
Mhm.
neither me or my dad or my family members knew how to even do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember at the time I knew that like my best shot, sorry for the background noise, but my best shot was going to be national team just because we travel so much with national team. And although not a lot of Costa Ricans had left the country at the time, the ones that had done it had been through the national team. So, um, I knew that I had to get good grades. I knew I had to speak English, and I was lucky enough that me and my brother went to this like American school where we started learning English since we were little. So at least we
Oh,
had like a
yeah.
good foundation of the language, and then I knew I had to just keep good grades. But also, me and my brother had a scholarship in there, so I had everything it took. I feel like I knew that my soccer would be decent enough to be recruited, I think, but none of that would really matter if no one knew about me.
Right.
Right. So, I feel like I was working so hard, like for 2 straight years. It was so much. I was like going to class, missing a lot of classes because I had to practice, and I would use public transportation because both my parents were working. So I need to every day leave class early to go train with the national team, and every day I had to make up whatever I would miss from that class. So imagine that for a year and a half.
Hmm.
That's just too much.
That's a lot.
Um, it's so
Well,
much.
and you were at this time, we were 16, 17 years old, like
Yes,
managing
yes,
all
I
of this.
was,
Yeah.
I was, yeah, 16, 17 years old, which apparently was super late compared to the age that the kids were being recruited, at least in women's soccer at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that until, I met coach, but yeah, so I was doing like just so much, and there came a point where um, I was really burned out,
Yeah.
really. And I wasn't sure if anyone, like, if this was worth it. At one point, I was like, well, I'm doing all this, but like, I just don't know if I can keep doing it, and if this is what it takes. I just don't know for how much longer I can do it. So I was really considering like just retiring from soccer, and I remember one time I was like actually studying in my room, and I nothing would go through my head. Like I couldn't study. It was just I was so tired.
Yeah.
And like I would read but not understand, like, and so I was like just started crying, and my dad came and he was like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, I'm so tired. I don't know if I want to do this." And my mom came too, and I was like, "Mom, honestly, like it would be also okay if I just give up the dream, and like just stay here in Costa Rica. I'll study here and just play here, whatever." But my mom just told me at the time, like, "Rocky, just you are tired. It's been a lot for me." She was like, "Don't make any decisions right now. Just maybe take a break, take a break." Something that I don't know. Like I feel like nowadays is more common, like mental health, right? It's being
Sure. Yeah.
a lot more out there, especially coming from athletes. Now we see it in the Olympics. But back then it wasn't a thing, and it was actually embraced. Like the no pain, no gain was such a popular thing, and no one can live like that forever. I think, at least not me. I couldn't do it. And so yeah, I took my mom's advice, and surely enough, right after that, at the time I was in the U20s national team, we were invited to this tournament in Boca, Boca Raton, something.
Boca
Boca
Raton,
Raton.
Florida. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this tournament was for it was a Thanksgiving invitational tournament that they always hold, the ODP regions.
Yep.
And the Penn State coach was there. She was coaching one of the teams, and that's all that I needed. I didn't really, it was like the one opportunity that I was waiting for. It just happened to be Penn State, which is an amazing school, an amazing program, an amazing coach. Like, it's just like
it's just like
I'm
snowballs to like all of the goodness at one time right there.
Exactly. But the funny thing is, like, me and my dad knew nothing about like rankings or like we Googled it, right? We went to our computer we had at the time, and like, my dad was like, he's a huge researcher, like, even though he doesn't speak like English well enough to like, he'll still read articles in English, and like he'll tell me about him, and like he doesn't care about the language. He'll, for his daughter, he'll do those things, and for soccer, he's such a soccer fan. So yeah, we went and looked at things, and we realized, okay, this looks like a big school, right? Like, we saw the facilities, the pictures, and we were like, oh my gosh, like, that's so cool. And then later we learned too that the Erica Walsh at the time, Erica Dombach now, coach was working with the U.S. national team too. Like, this, around the time that she was recruiting me, I remember, like, we would play against the U.S. national team, and she was there. So that to me was like, okay, okay, she is a good coach. She must be someone who at least knows a little bit, right? So, and I also, I recognized a couple of players who also were in the U20 U.S. women's national team. So I knew the soccer part was, I was really lucky and blessed. And the fact that she wanted me, it meant a lot to me. But, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm extending this too much, but even after that, so whatever, right? I was like, me and my dad didn't want to jump like right away because we knew nothing, but the more that we looked into it, the more it was like, okay, it's a yes. And coach was really, I think that's really important for me too, the fact that I felt that she would listen to me and she understood me, and any questions that I had or concerns, she sounded genuine in general. Like, she would be like, okay, like, here are the resources, and like, I put them through a lot of, now that I look back, like, I would throw them question after question, and they were amazing, and that to me meant a lot. And I think that was what made me feel like, I mean, I was scared to death to leave my home country, but I knew that that's what I was. It had been a lot for me to say no, but also the fact that I felt like I had people who would take care of me, and that to me meant so much. But so when I verbally committed, we all celebrated and all, but then the next steps were super stressful too. It was like all the paperwork. Being from Costa Rica, at least I went to an American school, quote unquote, but even then, like, a lot of the, like, translating everything was hard, because these translations have to be official. It can't just be me translating, right? It has to be like official documents. There was money involved, and there was like time, like, restrictions. It was really stressful because of that. And I'm not sure if you ever spoke with coaches about this, but it was like, it came to the point. I took the SAT, I took the TOEFL, like all these exams that I had to take. I did everything. And when it came down to the NCAA, because you had to be cleared, I was missing like 0.5 credits or something. And it was something like that, but like, our school would say like, no, this is worth what they're asking. So it was like a lot of miscommunication. And long story short on that, like, I was going to travel on a Sunday morning. And on a Friday night, I still didn't know if I was going to travel, because I was waiting on paperwork and responses. And I remember this still. I was in my house with my parents, and we were just waiting for the call because at that point, Anne, who was and she's still the assistant coach, she had told me, listen, we will call you Friday night to literally tell you if you're traveling or not. And if you don't, you'll come next semester. And so, but also I was so ready to leave because I felt stuck with my goals at home. I just felt so stuck. So I just didn't know how I could stay like training at home. It was just everything just a little hard. Um, so it was like in the afternoon, and I'm just so stressed. My dad is like just so stressed, and my mom's like like sensing the tension in the house, and she was like, "Listen, like it's okay. Like everything's gonna be okay. Like there's worse things in life. Like we're a family who are like religious, if you want to say. So my mom was like, this is gonna work out if that's what God wants us, for us or whatever. So, but I left my house and I just went for a run because I went to a track near home. That's where I trained. And I remember I couldn't even train. I was just bawling because I wanted it so bad and I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. So when I came back, I had missed calls from Anne, the assistant coach, and I texted her, just call me, and she called me, and like everything was okay, like everything was cleared up. And I was like, oh my God. So we were celebrating so much because it just felt like everything was double the work.
Yeah.
Just because of the language barrier, to like probably the international differences, like everything, right? The system, the school system. And like for me to feel like all the work that I had done might not it wouldn't be enough. Like it was just heartbreaking because I just felt like I had given my all
Yeah.
and I had nothing else to give.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then I mean I hopped on the plane. I was crying in the plane, but this time because I was so scared.
Yeah.
It was the first time I was leaving my house, and I'm such a homebody, and I feel like I mean, I don't want to generalize because culturally it's different, but that doesn't mean that families in the U.S. aren't close. They're really close. They're really tight, and they obviously love each other. But at home, maybe because our country's so small, it's just not a thing that families break up, right? Like if you get like people don't leave their homes until they actually get married, and I think that just recently started to change because people aren't getting married, but they're getting older, so they get out of their homes. But still, like it's just not normal, right? Like every weekend, families get together because you're within driving distance, and that's from grandparents all the way to grandchildren, right? And I was leaving all of that, and it was just overwhelming for me. And once I got to college, it was a whole nother set of challenges that I had. But I don't know if you want me to go into
Well,
those.
I want to circle back to you were talking about like the documentation that you needed to send in, like the fees that you have to pay. We talk a lot on the show about what does it take as far as the like regulations of going through the eligibility center. And from an international perspective, it is double the work. You have to have things officially translated. And, you mentioned getting started a little later, and you kind of did because at that point in time, if students who are listening, we want to get into the eligibility center by our sophomore year because that helps us to start get things moving so that we are not all of this pressure and all of these things that are happening. And even if it doesn't work out where you don't play a Division 1, you've gone through the process and you're either certified or not, and you know where you stand. But you guys didn't know that. You didn't know like this is all the things that we should be doing. And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, is because I want to bridge that gap and say, okay, here's step 1, here's step 2, so that we're not behind. Because I can only imagine the weight that you carried coming into Penn State your freshman year of like, I just went through all of this. I had 2 days to like re-prepare myself to hop on a plane. And now I'm leaving my family And let's also point out that State College, Pennsylvania is very cold in the winter. And I grew up in the South, you're from Costa Rica. It was really hard to live there in January.
Yeah, yeah. In the beginning, I was excited about it because I didn't know the snow or anything. But it was kind of in the like at the time I just didn't know many things. But now that I look back, it's always like, oh my gosh, like how did I do that? Because it was like in the middle of Pennsylvania and hard to you can't just get on a plane. Like it was easier for me even to drive to Newark and fly from there because it's cheaper, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
little things like that, like you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked too about, so you don't have to go off to these faraway places to have your experiences. But, sometimes it does work out where you do land at these faraway places that's far from home and it turns out to be one of the best decisions you made.
Mm.
And, I saw you grow so much by being a student athlete there at Penn State, your academics, your professionalism, and not to mention your soccer skills. It's like, I mean, you just flourished to the point of where, like, while y'all were there, you won a national championship,
Mm. Yeah, that was incredible.
right? And then
Never,
now
yeah.
you're playing professionally. And so, like, all of those things we talked about grit and resiliency and all of that, like, it truly paid off.
For sure, for sure. It's like I feel like maybe coming from like it depends, right? But it's coming from a country where I'm in women's soccer, and so women's soccer is definitely underdeveloped compared to the US. And then it was like the contrast. I came and like they give you all this gear. You have your own field and it's grass and it's beautiful. You have your everything. You have everything. So I feel like it was a different kind of challenge, but at the same time, like, um, how could I not take advantage of that? And I feel like I use that to my advantage. The fact that I just came from a place where I didn't have that, it was really easy for me to be grateful, versus
Yeah.
it could be challenging for someone else, that they might not realize it, but you've always had all these resources, and when you get there, it's like it's still not enough, and I feel like I'm not saying it's wrong, it's no one's fault, I'm just saying like, yeah, definitely when you get to a place where you've worked so hard, and that's for every student athlete, I feel like nothing is given to anybody.
Right.
So I feel like, keeping that perspective of, you know, yeah, maybe just setting your priorities and knowing why you're there. Like obviously enjoy the journey and stuff, but yeah, definitely make the most out of it because so many people would want that opportunity
That's
for
right.
sure.
And you talk a lot too about like the academic side of things. Like that wasn't really easy, but we know that you had a really big support system in the academic center at Penn State with Jim,
Yeah.
who just made sure, and that's what I want to share with our student athletes is when they're making this transition, whoever that academic counselor or academic, person is that is in that athletic department, that is your go-to resource because
Mhm.
without that, like you're not going to be able to stay and play.
Yeah, yeah. And I've heard stories of other people who, it's just one side of the story, but academic advisors have a huge role in your career, uh, academic career. So yeah, you want to trust that person, and hopefully, hopefully you get to meet those people, like the right people, because you can't do it on your own. You actually do depend a lot on the structure of college here is really cool because although it's really hard, like that's exactly why they have all this aid. So you got to take advantage of that, but just because that is there, it doesn't mean that it works out necessarily. So I agree. Like finding hopefully a university, right, that actually cares, and
Right.
that's what I
Yeah.
kept finding over and over, right. I feel like the process of my eligibility, you mentioned like now there's people like you who help people out, but my help was the coaches, and that's not necessarily their job, but they cared. I mean, they wanted me there too, so I mean, they had to make it work, and I get that, but I mean, it wasn't only stressful for me, it was really stressful for them. And so the fact those little things like you should take note of, right? And um yeah, hopefully you find a place of people who care about you, because at the end of the day, like there's so many colleges out there, and there's big ones, there's small ones, but that doesn't mean there's one better than the other. I truly mean that. I truly
I
mean that. I think,
100% agree. Yeah.
yeah, and once you're after college, you just want more.
Mhm.
You really are. And I love Penn State, but once you're out of college, you gotta figure it out again, and your university will probably help you out. They must have resources, but yeah, I just don't want people to, I don't know, like whatever opportunity you get, like really value it,
Mhm.
even if whatever it is or however it looks like.
Yeah. Well, and you shared a little bit about that, how when you first kind of got a little bit of an offer, you guys took a step back to go, okay, is this really something I want to do? And we talk a lot about that, of saying like you have to weigh your pros and your cons, but you have to go with your gut. You will
Yes.
know if it is the right place for you, no matter if it's a Power 5 school, a small Division 1, a junior college. Like when you talk to those coaches, when you step on the field, if something feels icky, then like you need to take a step back and you need to say, okay,
Yes.
something's not right, because in your gut, you will know.
Yeah, yeah, and that's okay, And sometimes it's illogical, but exactly, I agree. I mean, I feel like definitely be logical, right? Write your pros and cons, etc. But if there's still something you're uneasy about, you know, just just listen.
That's
Listen,
right.
because there's a reason. And
Right.
hopefully, your family supports you with that. And I feel like it's so stressful. So hopefully your family is there to just help you ease that stress. And I feel like families need to hear that as well.
That's
It's a
right.
stress for all the family too, right? Because families care about their kids and stuff like that. But it is such a teamwork thing.
Oh, 100%. It literally is a whole teamwork,
Mhm,
from your family to the coaches to your actual team that you're going to be on, to
mhm.
all of the support staff that you're going to have when you're on campus.
Yes, for sure.
Well, Rocky, the podcast is called Confessions from the Sidelines. So
Yeah.
I would love to know. Now, this is probably going to be a little different question for you, because you've never really gotten a chance to stand on the sidelines, because you're usually on the field for the full 90 minutes. So, what's your favorite memory, if you have one, from standing on the sidelines? If not, what's your favorite memory overall?
Well, that's really nice of you, but I wasn't. I had to really work on my fitness when I was in college, and yeah, I definitely stood on the sideline plenty of times. But actually, I do have a really fun memory. Not fun, just funny. Like you mentioned, Penn State is such a cold place, literally
So
cold.
cold.
The winters are so long, and so when it hits November, it's already freezing. And this year, apparently, like we broke the record ever since like it hadn't been that cold in the last 40 years. And so I was just lucky enough to be there for that. And the field, I remember, was so hard that it was like rock solid. It was grass, but it was like
It
solid.
was
So they
frozen.
had to get us like this special cleats to play, because otherwise it was gonna be a mess. And I remember standing on the sidelines, and they would bring heaters, like these heaters, and I would just stand by them. And our trainer at the time, I think she was from like Tennessee or something like that, so from a really like humid state. She would be standing there so long, like her clothing got like burned out. Like there was a hole, because she
Oh my
didn't
gosh.
realize though it was so cold that it got burned. And like, oh my gosh, it was just a funny memory, because we would try and stay like, jumping and active in the sideline because it's so cold. But like the heaters, you couldn't even feel that you were getting, the clothes was burning
Oh
because
my
it was
gosh.
so
It was
cold.
so cold. Well, and I used to tell y'all too, where like, luckily you guys were playing on the Big Ten network all the time. So when it would get like that super cold, I would say, okay, I'm going to watch from home. Like it's a little too
Ah,
cold,
yes,
just to cheer you guys on,
yes,
because I
that's
can only
true.
imagine. I
No,
know what you're talking about, and like my bones are starting to get like
yeah.
so sore thinking about how cold it was.
No, you knew whoever would go and watch your game around that time, they truly loved you.
Yeah,
That's
that's
how you
right.
knew. It was so cold.
That's right. Rocky, thank you so much for being on the show and having a conversation today.
Of course. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for the invite. And I'm happy to hear about everything that you're doing because I truly think it will help a lot of people.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, where can people find you on social media, like on Instagram, if they want to just cheer you on? Because, you guys are still playing.
Yeah. Well, I currently play for the Portland Thorns here in Portland, Oregon. But yeah, social media, it's a huge thing now, right?
Great.
And
Yeah.
so you can find me as oh, R Rocky.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
type
Yeah.
Rocky.
We will put that, you know what? We'll link your Instagram handle in the show notes because it is a little different. Like we call
Yeah,
you
it's a little
Rocky, but
different. I
like
was gonna spell
Raquel.
it,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll do that. And then we'll also put the link to the Portland Thorns too, so that people can like go check it out and see what you guys have going on.
For sure, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you again.
You're welcome, Sarah. Nice to see you again.